on stage here at Main Street Theater in Rice Village, and we're getting ready for a production of Tom Stoppard's The Hard Problem tonight. When I reached out to see who are the people in Houston that we need to connect with in regard to the scientific hard problem, the problem of consciousness, first and foremost was his name. So Jeff was obviously, and it was extremely fortuitous that his book, The Flip, had just come out, and we're thrilled. It's kind of grown from there. One of the amazing things about playwright Tom Stoppard is there may be 5 or 6 levels of intellect and academia that you may not get all at once, but the humanity is always there. And of course, humanity and consciousness go hand in hand. So my hope for tonight is that people will really get engaged in the play, take something from it, and then hold that with them while we have our discussion with Jeff afterwards. And he can then help us go a step further in understanding the hard problem itself and understanding the implications for that and sort of where we are with research and science and religion in terms of bringing this incredibly human question together.
Basically, what the play is about is this scientific third-person view of the human as a kind of biological machine that works perfectly well in the biomedical world versus the subjective experience of being a human being a person who's not reducible to or who cannot be explained by biology and chemistry and all the things we know that the body does. And so those are deep philosophical questions that Stoppard's playing with, and he's also linking them to ethical issues of what is the good. If you're thinking about the good in traditional social scientific ways, you just say, well, the good is what you've been conditioned to think is good. But for Stoppard, that's not enough. He wants to explore this idea that goodness might be objective in some way. It might actually exist somewhere, somehow. And how can we talk about that if we just think it's all relative and it's all just a function of where you grew up and what your parents happen to believe and what your society wants you to think. So I think what we're really struggling with in this play, or what we're about to see, is, do the humanities matter? That's the deepest question. And if consciousness exists in itself, then the humanities not only matter, they matter in a profound way.
Actually, I was going to UC Berkeley, and I was taking a class on consciousness, and Jeff came and did a guest lecture in it. So I met him there, and that's kind of roundabout how I came here. The class was like bringing together Buddhism and neuroscience and kind of asking all these same questions, the hard problem kind of questions. And I think it was just the way he talked about it. Like, he talked about mystical experience and like anomalous experiences like he talks about in the book.
I study new religious movements, and they also ask this kind of question because when new religious movement born arises as an alternative to conventional religion, and when conventional religion cannot really answer these kind of questions, then new religious movement come up with their own answers.
Does consciousness arise secondarily to our brain and our bodies, or is it already existing prior to that? So they kind of touched on that once they were asking that, and I think that's where a lot of there's a lot of debate around that, which I find really interesting. More of the Asian traditions, which I study too, the kind of Hindu and Buddhist philosophy talks about consciousness as a prior condition that's already the case, and then there's the brain that kind of arises from that.
And so I wrote this little book called The Flip, Epiphanies of Mind and the Future of Knowledge. And I know this is a bit nerdy, but I think there's a lot of nerds in the room. It was really about a plea for the humanities. And the argument was this, that if we understand consciousness or human subjectivity as nothing more than a product of neurons or evolutionary biology or all of the things we saw in the play, then in fact, those of us who are in the humanities are studying nothing, right? We're studying an illusion of the person or a subjectivity, whether that's expressed through art or religion or philosophy or literature. We are essentially studying nothing. And if that's our conviction, the humanities will dwindle away and it will disappear. If, on the other hand, as David Chalmers clearly thinks, the coiner of the phrase the hard problem, consciousness is actually something fundamental to physical reality and probably to the entire cosmos, then suddenly those of us in the humanities studying these states are studying something fundamentally real. Something fundamentally real that the sciences actually cannot study with their objectifying or mathematical methods. They can do all sorts of wonderful other things, but they really can't get inside these first-person states of consciousness that are the sort of core of this play. And so the flip's really about, that's the basic idea of the book, that really everything hinges on how we think about ourselves. Are we nothing but a walking biological robot with a computer on top? Or are we some kind of embodied form of cosmic mind that is expressing itself through this particular biological and evolved organism? So none of this eliminates or erases all that we know through the sciences, but it reads it in a very different way.